All right. Welcome, everyone, to Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Working People is a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and is brought to you in partnership with In These Times magazine and the Real News Network. This show is produced by Jules Taylor and made possible by the support of listeners like you. My name is Maximilian Alvarez, and I am very excited to share today's episode with y'all. Because, believe me, as the editor-in-chief and co-executive director of an independent news outlet, I am painfully, anxiously, and overwhelmingly aware of all the bad, no good, awful stories that are, just flooding our news feeds every single day. I know how debilitating and soul-crushing it can be to be bombarded by the relentlessly depressing headlines here in the year of our Lord 2025. But as an on-the-ground reporter who also gets to travel the country and connect with and speak to workers, organizers, and people of conscience everywhere who are standing up, fighting for their rights and fighting for what's right, I also know that there are so many people out there who have not given up hope. People who give me hope as they continue speaking up, fighting, organizing, making important gains, and racking up real important wins in their daily struggles. And, our mission here on Working People and on the Real News Network is to find those people, to lift up their voices and their stories, to connect you to them and the movements for change that are taking shape all around us, and to inform you on what you can do to get involved and be part of that change. And let me tell you guys something. I got to see firsthand that there are good people making good trouble and making change happen right now in the state of Minnesota. For the past couple years now, my wife Meg and I have been honored to be invited to be guest educators at a phenomenal and truly unique program for union members and elected union leaders across the state of Minnesota. It's called the Minnesota Union Leadership Program, or MULP for short, and it's run by the Labor Education Services team, who are housed within the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota. And that small but amazing team of folks whom I've gotten to know very well and work with closely in recent years is also responsible for publishing the truly invaluable Workday magazine. I mean, their editor-in-chief is the great Sarah Lazar, so you already know it's going to be amazing, but they do in-depth, humane, and worker-focused journalism that covers labor issues and working-class struggles across the Midwest United States. If you haven't checked out Workday magazine, but you listen to this podcast, I can basically 1,000% guarantee that you will love it. So seriously, go check it out and go support them. And if you are a current or prospective union member in the state of Minnesota, I cannot recommend MULP highly enough. And here's how their website explains the program. Quote, now in its 14th cohort, the Minnesota Union Leadership Program equips participants with the knowledge and skills to address the challenges facing working people and our movements. Through 6 in-depth sessions scheduled over 8 months, participants study working people's movements, past, present, and future, while learning together how workers succeed in building a more just and equitable society. Emerging and established worker activists build relationships and network with their fellow cohort members, as well as others from the labor movement and other social movements. End quote. Again, if you listen to this show, I imagine that description will already be as enticing to you as it was to me. But then on top of that, imagine getting to spend 2 days in October in a beautiful, idyllic cabin-style setting out in the woods of northern Minnesota with dozens of union members and leaders from different unions. I'm talking SEIU, AFSCME, the IBEW, the Teamsters, and more, as well as organizers and staffers from different worker centers around the state. And the whole time, you're talking in depth with each other about labor history, about the radical traditions and accomplishments of the labor movement. You're talking about, how to be an effective labor leader, and you're learning from others who are in the same boat in different unions and different industries. You're talking about how organized labor can lead the way in confronting the most critical threats that working people face on and off the job today. There are labor film screenings and lively labor discussions happening around bonfires at night. I mean, that's what happens at MULP. And frankly, it's fucking incredible. And it's one of the highlights of my and Meg's year. It's inspiring, it's productive, and it is a much-needed antidote to the ever-creeping feelings of powerlessness and despair that we're all feeling. To be honest, I wish thousands of programs like this existed all over the country. And who knows, with your help, that could be the case. But to give y'all a taste of what the Minnesota Union Leadership Program and the people there are like, I took my podcast recorder with me this year, and I got a chance to sit down with a handful of participants between our sessions and record some short interviews. Basically, I asked everyone the same two questions. First, I asked them to introduce themselves and talk about their path to MULP. Then, I asked everyone what it means to them to be a union member here and now, in this dystopian year, in this changing country. Here's what they had to say.
My name is Mary Hampton. I am a community organizer with the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, and it's a regional branch of the AFL-CIO. I've been organizing for about 5 years. I've been involved in the labor movement probably about 8 years. I started working for Minneapolis Public Schools as a special education assistant in 2016, and it was important for me to find a job that was unionized because I come from a labor family. My mom was a third-generation welder for sheet metal worker, and my dad is a social worker with child protection with Minneapolis in Hennepin County for 30 years, and both of their families' parents were unionized. My dad's dad, he worked at General Motors in Illinois and was able to provide for his family. He had 12 kids, so he was able to take care of all of them with the union job. And my grandpa, he was a welder. He actually helped create the ductwork at the Mall of America that helps recycle the air and the heat and stuff. So I always think that's kind of cool. But yeah, I thought that was important. I always knew some of this stuff growing up, and getting opportunity to work a union job really changed my life just because of the money and the benefits. But there's also still when you got your contracts comes up and things weren't great. And I was like, well, what can I do? And I've always been a kind of person to just kind of get in to do some stuff, and an opportunity to kind of get involved in something. And I just took on more roles because obviously when you're in a union, you're like, can you do this? Can you do this? I got on the bargaining team in 2019. And then after I was on that bargaining team, I got on the executive board. So I was on leadership. Then I was on the second bargaining team when Minneapolis MFT went on strike in 2022.
I remember interviewing some of y'all when you were on strike.
I could see that. Yeah, there was just so much going on. It was crazy. It was a really great learning experience. Strikes are just transformative in a lot of different ways. And I think that transformed the work at MFT and in our membership and the power dynamic there. So that 2022-23 school year, I went on leave with MFT and organized. And that was, again, very transformative. I learned a lot. And actually, during that time, I came to MULP as a panelist. So I was able to speak to people and also kind of learn kind of what MULP did. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool at that time. But then I realized you gotta like pay, and I was like, well, MFT's not paying for that. Not in a bad way, but they were like, yeah, we can't pay for that. And so as I moved through my career, after I organized with MFT, I applied. I worked at the school one more year, and then somebody let me know that the MRLF was hiring, and I applied and got the job, and it's been up ever since. My first day on the job there, I went on the strike line with LIUNA while the park people were on strike, and it's just been on go, and it's been a really great experience there too. I'm obviously very passionate about organizing. I really care about, I just didn't even know it was something you could do as a job, like talking to people. I was like, wow, I'm so good at this. I love this, you know? And so I've just leaned in and take every opportunity to kind of learn. And I think MULP, somebody had came advertising the training, and my job was like, you want to go? I was like, yeah, you know? And so I signed up, and I got accepted because you have to apply and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I just, I love taking the opportunity to learn and meet people and just experience the things. And I think it's going to be an exciting opportunity.
Hell yeah. And, I guess like with all of that in your background and with all we've been, discussing here at MULP the past 2 days, I'm asking folks, like, what does it mean to you to be a union member, here and now in the United States of America in 2025?
I've always really felt that being in a union is like access. It's a union, and the labor movement is an established place. It's like an entity that has respect and that can move and change things in a tangible way, especially in these moments where there's like a lot of aspirational movements. And that's nothing wrong with that, but like, after you go to rally, now what? After you go meet for some community stuff, now what? And then I think being involved in labor and being involved in my union gives me a something to do with it. And your contract is so powerful. And I feel privileged when I live in Minnesota. We have so many labor rights, and we have a lot of access to do a lot within our union. But like, being able to know that this thing can change when we want it to, and like it can change my material reality in that moment. I can make more money. I can get a different experience at my job, like, and I get a say. And a lot of these things we don't have control over. I don't have control over the military. I don't have control over, what the leaders are going to do, but I have control over this. And it's my union. It's not the leadership. And I think about that when we're doing all this work. Like, there's a lot of people in our spaces that think that the people that are elected are the ones that make the choices, when there wouldn't be those people there without the members. The members are so important, and with numbers is what power is. People is power. And I feel so strongly that in these moments where we feel like there's not a lot of hope, there's a lot of hope when it comes to this community that you build, where power can actually change things. And even outside of just the contract, the political power that labor has and has had in the past is in a way not being used as we could, because of there is so much power and influence that labor has, that in these moments, like, it could be so transformative. And I think we're getting to a point in the labor movement where it's bubbling, like, what are we going to do with this? And I think a lot of people feel the same way. And even if everyone doesn't agree on how to go there, we have these places where we can have the conversation, go to a chapter meeting and bring up that issue. And like, I'll also say, I think with the union, like, it's a place you can't push me out of. You can't tell me I'm not allowed to be here, because my dues go into the work that's being done here. This is my space. And having autonomy in that, like, especially as a Black woman, where people don't really want my voice, or they don't want to hear where my vision goes a lot of the time, or they don't necessarily take into account, like, I get to have control over that and advocate for the people that don't necessarily get their voices heard. And I can make the spaces for people, like, there is mechanisms for that. And I think that's also really powerful.
Well, I am Trey Bolton. I work at Fairview Riverside Hospital. I'm a psychiatric associate on some mental health units. I'm from SEIU Healthcare, Minnesota, and Iowa. I mainly work with pediatric patients, supporting them and helping them throughout their time while they're in a crisis management situation. I've been doing this off and on now for 9 years, and it's been a wild ride, but I've loved every bit of it. I think really what brought me here to MULP, especially through our union, when I look back at our initial vote, to be honest, back in September 2021, when we finally had our vote tally that day, we had a 98% yes vote out of around 350 people.
Call that a landslide.
Yeah. It was just so exciting and wonderful to see how like united we were as a group, especially like coming through and dealing with all of the like exhaustion, fear, and like staffing problems we were having during the pandemic. Because prior to this, we had historically a couple failed union attempts in our position, but I think after that pandemic, it really pushed us into like wanting to fight for not only protections for ourselves, but that win was also protections and safety measures for our patients. So when dealing with all of that and working with my fellow coworkers through the union efforts and when they went through bargaining and won our protections and finally voted on our contract, it was just strong to be able to see all of us working together. And when I came back after some schooling, I joined in to be a union leader again and started helping in a different role this time of being able to push through grievances, helping support my workers in a different way that normally were kind of left up to a smaller individual of groups. And I think after that initial push of like that burning we had of the vote and unionizing, we started having a little bit of a slipping of that. And I think that just happens naturally as things cool down a bit when you get that. And I wanted to join in to help reinvigorate that and also help with burnout from our union workers and stewards that were already there. So with that, I've gone through several different trainings, and it kind of led me here to MULP to try to expand that knowledge and that like the tools that I can use to help not only with our local union, but further as well.
And having gone through all of that to get your union and to be, an active member and now representative of your union, like what does it mean to you to be a union member here now in United States 2025?
I think a big thing that it means to me is just having a strong, supportive community. I know that not everyone has that, especially with everything that is going on in not only just the world, but also specifically in our own country here. It means to have a group of people who are willing to fight not only for our own needs, but our needs that also care about our patients. A lot of those cuts that are coming down from the federal government are directly affecting not only our patients who rely on Medicaid reimbursements and Medicare reimbursements, but they also directly fund our units in hospitals. And when we don't have that kind of funding, our patients are put in danger. Our coworkers that I work with in our unions, we do suffer from that. And the nice thing is that we've been able to use our union membership together to fight for increased reimbursement rates on a state level, along with supporting each other and making a community that when things get tough, we can work together to keep ourselves and our patients safe.
My name's Nathaniel Hobbs, born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm part of the IBEW 110 electrical union. Before I got into electrical, I was working non-union for a machine shop for 7 years, being a machinist. And I guess I was just working really hard. I was working 10s for probably like 3 years straight, just every day. And, I was ambitious. Like I was good at my job. I wanted to go become a mechanical engineer, and I started paying my own way through school. I started asking the company for help to help me pay for school because like it's only going to make me a more valuable worker. And basically he told me like to piss off. And that was kind of like the wake up call for me. I was like, oh, like they just want me to stay in the same position because I'm good at running all these machines. And they don't see a value in me like pursuing greater things and bringing my ambition to fruition, essentially. So that was a big wake up call for me, and I was like, oh, I need a union. And I always wanted to be an electrician anyway. Ended up finding a route to make kind of a lateral move, so I didn't take a huge pay cut right away as with a non-union electrical shop. But the whole time I was like, I'm gonna join the union because I knew that boat wasn't gonna go float forever. But yeah, I joined up, and it's been the greatest decision I've ever made. Seriously, I mean, like the biggest propaganda point I've always had working non-union, especially with machining anyway, is like, oh, they're gonna stick you in front of a machine, and this applies to like electrical or like whatever else too, but like they're gonna stick in front of a machine and you're gonna run the same part for your whole life. And like the whole idea was like they're not gonna like help you grow or allow you to like pursue better things and stuff. And that's been the complete opposite. Ever since I joined the union, like you get exactly what you put into it. And every time I like show that ambition and stuff, like everyone's super psyched to see it, and like they're like, all right, this guy like wants to do more. Like he wants to be ambitious, and that's not for everybody, and that's fine. Like we'll take everybody we need, like more market share, the better, and the better for everybody. So rising tide lifts all boats, right? But it's just good to see like oh, I do get rewarded with hard work. Like it's not unions aren't anti hard work like a lot of people try to make it out to be. But yeah, like so as soon as I joined, I was like, I'm going to every meeting. Like I'm like whatever. So like I tried going to a meeting before I was even sworn in, and they were like, "Whoa, all right, like, what?"
Like, slow down, Tiger.
Yeah. Let's plan this out a little more. And yeah, I got sworn in, and I try to go as much as I can. I got my own family and stuff too. Things happen. You got to find time when you can, make sacrifices when you can. But I think everyone in my local kind of sees that I like want to be involved. I want to build this community to be stronger. And I think it's incredibly important. I mean, we're seeing the lowest rates of union membership in the last 100 years, and I think unionism is like essential to the growth of the workforce, to the growth of the human race, and I don't see any other way for us to like claim our power other than like through labor. And so yeah, that's what kind of brought me to MULP.
Well, and sticking with that theme, like, what does it mean to you to be a union member here and now in the year of our Lord 2025?
Fortunately, I'm in a pretty awesome state, the state of Minnesota. We're in a pretty good position compared to a lot of the travelers and such that I talk to that go all over the country, and or are even from say states like Arkansas and stuff, and like their only market share is industrial because they need skilled workers in industrial. Otherwise, you have job site accidents, and that's like with electrical especially, it's huge. The whole safety aspect, like, I mean, I hear stuff all the time, and like people getting hung up on 277, and it just, we need like very good safety practices in electrical because fatalities happen like more than like most industries, and it's no joke. And I think it's important that like we have the time to like assess a situation, approach it in a safe manner, and minimize the amount of like harm that may be done. And so safety is a huge thing too as far as union work goes. I mean, yeah, like sometimes like you got to pick up the pace or whatever. That's any job, but I've never been like rushed or like pushed into a situation that I shouldn't be. And I've ran into that before non-union. And even machining, like it's used to be the highest paying trade in the 80s, and used to have a strong union until it got destroyed. And I mean, guys lose fingers, guys like get shrapnel in their eye, all sorts of stuff happens all the time. And unfortunately, a lot of it is like defense based too, which is or defense, I should say, offense based. There's a double think there, but that's another reason why I'm like really happy I'm not working for the Department of Offense anymore. So, but yeah, just stay strong in solidarity and do what you can for your community, try to get involved, and it's important. All that hard work pays off eventually.
I'm Claire Matthews Lingen. I grew up in the Twin Cities in Minnesota and have been working at Centro de Trabajadores Unidos en la Lucha, CETUL, for 3.5 years. We're a worker center in South Minneapolis. So I'm in fundraising there, but have been in close proximity to our work with worker members. And yeah, we support low-wage workers of color around the Twin Cities. I also am in a grad program at the University of Minnesota, Master of Human Rights, focusing on labor rights. And there's surprisingly little about labor rights in that program. So piecing it together, and MULP I'm seeing as kind of a supplement to the lack of programming they have around labor. So I see it, working well with my current job and then also the education I'm in right now. And wanting to stay in this work in some form. Not sure if that's at the worker center level. I'm also involved in my staff union. So there's about 12 of us in a small staff union unit connected to the CWA, the Communication Workers of America. And that's been a good experience of kind of seeing the inner workings of a union, even at a really small scale.
Well, and, given your experience as a union member, but also, being part of the labor movement through a worker center, like, what does it mean to you to be doing that work, especially given the specific nature of the work you do at the worker center? Like, what does it mean to be doing that work in the year of our Lord 2025 in this country?
Yeah. Well, first thing that comes to mind is I feel like the staff union at CETUL is ideally walking the walk of like the working conditions that we want people to have. So on some level, there's that like acting out the reality that we want, within our small unit, doing what we can there. But then also, in the current moment, thinking about how we do really need the solidarity and the understanding of supporting non-union workers alongside building up union power. So that piece of CETUL's work has been really solid in the Twin Cities they've been around like 17 or 18 years. So just thinking about, the people that are often left out of the traditional labor movement and knowing that needs to all be tied together. And we have a lot of union partnerships too and support on that end, but also thinking about the historic hurt there in some cases of workers not seeing themselves reflected in the labor movement. But knowing that, our non-union construction workers that we support and service workers and people who are in these sectors that are hard to unionize or impossible to unionize in some cases, like that, feels really important, especially right now when we're being pushed by the mainstream to leave people behind and like not be bringing everyone along as we fight up against what we're up against. Coming into my job at CETUL, I was kind of told the history of the worker center developing and learned that a lot of times there's tension between unions and worker centers in different cities. But I think that that's been really effectively challenged by CETUL and by the labor movement in the Twin Cities, because we do work really closely with unions, but also know that we're kind of in a distinct lane of work as well. So that's been really positive to see and to know that there can be that level of solidarity.
Hell yeah. Go support your local labor center, folks.
So I guess I'll skip the name. So I'm an electrical worker in the IBEW. And what brought me to MULP? It was leadership that reached out to a number of us because I think they were trying to fill some spots. But I'm really glad I was able to go. I didn't really know what to expect. I was really excited looking at the program because I saw that one of the first sessions, like, it named racial capitalism in the description. And so I was like, that's awesome. Like, when my training director reached out and said there was a leadership conference, I was like, okay, like, it's probably not going to be that radical, like the IBW, like, we have in our like international org's constitution, there's a whole declaration from like the 80s that says like we oppose all subversive isms, including it says like Nazism and communism, and I'm like, hold on, like, I really fuck with some of the subversive isms, so
I fuck with some of the subversive isms.
Like I think we actually should be subverting a lot of this stuff. So So I wasn't sure how radical it was going to be, but I was really excited when I was reading the descriptions, and like I was really, yeah, I was pleased with the radical energy of like the participants that showed up. It was also really interesting hearing from people in totally different like types of unions, because it was a good reminder of how little experience I have in just the context of the IBEW. I haven't sat through any like contract negotiations yet. I came in right after our last contract was agreed on, and I haven't sat through a lot of disciplinary stuff or like conflict mediation. And so it was interesting hearing from people going through that kind of struggle within their union, and also just hearing about, unions that have different structures than like the construction trades with like, this really established union that's like really business oriented. So yeah, it was interesting to be reminded of like the different struggles people have just, in the workplace, like working on teams with like non-unionized employees and that sort of thing. So it was interesting to, okay, so like part of my deal, right, is like I started like transitioning before I got into construction. And so I really didn't, I was expecting to go into like a hostile environment, and I knew I was going to have to be like undergoing this process of like understanding myself and like navigating that while also spending 40 hours a week presenting a different version of myself. And so that's created some interesting dynamics, I guess, in terms of like, it's in terms of building relationships with my coworkers. And sometimes that's because like, they look at me and assume that like I'm going to agree with just like some really fucked up shit they say, and it's like, okay, yeah, like I wasn't going to feel safe around you anyways. But I guess that's just to say like that, it precludes me to being like closed off in a certain way in the workplace, even when I'm talking about different struggles and stuff, which like depending on the job site I've been on some big job sites, and I've been on some little ones. In different contexts, I've felt different amounts of like, like I guess safety in being more, in trying to push the envelope more. But like whenever I'm talking about those things, when I'm trying to like bring up larger issues with my coworkers, it's, if I'm talking about like, if I'm trying to agitate with them about like, you have union siblings who are like trans and stuff, and like you are going to have to make a choice. Like this choice is going to be asked of you. Like, will you stand up for them? And it's interesting trying to talk to them about that from the, when they're receiving it from the perspective of like, someone that's like not necessarily connected to that.
Yeah, it's like if it's a theoretical exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of theoretical. Like there is at least like one out trans woman in my local, and I had like the privilege of working with her for a while. So yeah, but like it's largely a theoretical thing for these guys. And so yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of, on the big job that I was working on for a while, there were a number of conversations I had where I was really trying to push people to say like, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like there are real choices that are going to be asked of you guys, and your response to it should be obvious in terms of like solidarity and stuff. But it's not obvious for a lot of these people.
Which is such a sad reality, right? Because like you are like in that moment on that job site talking to your fellow union members, like that is a pitch perfect example of what we're talking about. It's like if the labor movement means what it says, that it is a place for working people of all types, here we are in the same union, and I can't even be my full self with you, even though we're all doing the same damn job.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if we don't figure that out, we're not going to get to where we need to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I guess in that vein, like, everyone's been given different answers to this question, but I'm curious, like, what it means to you, here and now in the United States in 2025. Like, what does it mean to be a union member, good and bad?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different answers to that. For one thing, like I have higher wages than I would in any non-union position if I was doing a non-union apprenticeship in my industry, and my benefits package is a lot better. And one thing I love about the IBW is like I don't have to like go interview for jobs. I mean, as an apprentice, you don't get you're indentured, and so you receive contractor assignments from your training director, so you don't actually get to make choices about where you're working generally. And like people work things out sometimes, but that's kind of like under the table stuff, and you can be like disciplined for if you're like go to your contractor and you're like, I don't want to work for you guys or something, you can get in trouble for that. But anyways, I hated interviewing. I hate LinkedIn. So like that was a big draw for me, honestly, for getting into construction.
Yeah, a hatred of LinkedIn can push us to do a lot of things.
Yeah. But like, I don't know. I mean, it also means like, of course, I think there's like a huge responsibility, because what good is like building this collective power if we're not like using it to practice solidarity? And like, I think solidarity is something that, I mean, it's like a loaded term that a lot of people use in a lot of different ways. And something I'm just thinking about often is like solidarity, like with whom, and like what are the like actionable practices that, yeah, I mean, it's like solidarity is a practice, right? I don't know who said that, but because for a lot of my coworkers, I mean, some of them, not sure they could pronounce solidarity, not to be a bitch, but and like, but like some of them, it's solidarity with like electrical workers, and some of them it's like solidarity with building trades. And so I guess like my main thing for like what it means to be a union member is just I see like so much bad shit on the horizon, and like not on the horizon. Obviously stuff is like really fucked up now, and it has been for a long time. And also like it's getting worse, and there's like more and more immediate things that are, there's more and more questions that are being forced, people are being forced to be asked. And it feels like a lot of the sort of organizational attitude that I've observed in my limited time working in the union is just short-sighted. They don't have a broad vision for navigating or like resolving any of the broader like contradictions or like,
Full-on civilizational crises that we're facing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shows up in all these little ways. Like, we're really lucky to have a very well-funded private health plan as part of our local. And something a couple months ago I heard in a general membership meeting was one of the executive board members talking about, he was talking about like issues in terms of like the fund for that private plan. And it was really weird. Like, he said something about like, yeah, some people have like really long hospital stays, and he like named one or two things of like specific like operations people were having or something. And I guess like I mean, it felt just really weird to me, because it was like, why, like, hold on, like, why do you know this? And also like, can you see my claims for like estradiol and shit? But like, um, but also like, it's just hard to sit there and not like, it feels like I can see all this stuff that they're just not seeing. And I'm just like, do you not understand that like we're in a relatively stronger position, but this is something that's affecting everyone who has to use any kind of health insurance, because the whole health finance system is fucked up because of all of the like basic ass like logical consequences of the like economic system we live under. And we will not be able to, it's like we're on like a sinking island in terms of like my union having higher wages and our good benefits package and stuff like that. And it just, yeah, it just feels like they're not prepared, and they're not envisioning like, they're not only like not addressing what the real challenges on the horizon are looking like, but then they're not like imagining how we can take bolder actions to respond. And yeah, so I see that in like our healthcare plan. I see that in like, I mean, obviously stuff with ICE.
I mean, I've seen it talking to other IBEW members around the country who are like working outdoors in Texas in record heat.
Yeah.
But have no like climate policy, or like are, helping members are helping to build data centers without like the union thinking through the environmental impacts of these things, kind of.
Right. And it's just like, what do we build? Because I understand, like, it makes sense structurally that our organization isn't geared towards questioning the environmental impacts of the project they're trying to get approved so that their members have work. But like, obviously we need structures for that because, yeah, obviously it's just like, again, like, how are you not seeing this shit on the horizon with the water usage and everything? And all they're concerned about is like, we're going to get a bunch of data centers and we're going to be building them over the next 10 years. We're going to bring in this many more apprentices so that we can staff the data centers. And I'm just like, okay, but like, what are we going to do when there's like hundreds of thousands of climate refugees who are like trying to find safety in our state? What are we going to do when like ICE is showing up on our job site? I mean, like, shit, like I've worked with like someone who's like active duty National Guard, and that was its whole thing. Oh my God.
We'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah. I've met a lot of interesting people in my work so far.
Well, and I guess just like, do you, maybe like a final quick question, like after being here at MULP with other union members and people in the labor movement, but from different sides, like, do you feel like we've started to answer those questions a bit better than how you've been seeing it in your own local, or do you feel like you have more questions than answers at this point?
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of questions. And yeah, I mean, my eyes have been opened to like other questions. And again, like I said earlier, like I don't have a lot of experience in terms of, I haven't been in the union a long time, not from a union family. And so I definitely have a lot to learn in terms of seeing contract negotiations play out and that sort of thing. And that's all really helpful because most of my like self-education has been more overarching theory stuff. And that feels really empowering when I'm like, okay, that makes sense, Lenin. Like, yeah, this is, I get why like monopolistic capitalism tends towards this. And like, wow, it feels empowering and also so fucking frustrating that like you laid out this dynamic so clearly and people are like arguing about it right now and just like missing basic points.
Mm-hmm.
But then all this minute stuff is important too, because, it matters like in terms of how, when I show up to work, when I show up to hall meetings, like how I'm imagining like I guess that's the big thing is like that I'm trying to get out of this is imagining what actions I can take really to move us in any kind of direction that feels, like it improves my chances of making it to retirement. Because it's not looking good right now. I mean, I went into this work being like, okay, like it could be as little as like a year or two before someone notices that like I'm growing tits and then like pops me in the back of the head, or maybe just like the work environment becomes impossible. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised though. I mean, like the first couple months were pretty hard because I wasn't really meeting anyone that was like super visibly queer. And yeah, but after you start to like find some community, and that's been like a lifesaver.
Current name, Cuauhtemoc Rex. What brought me here? Local 2822, Council 5, President and Vice President. What physically brought me here is one of the union members who drove me. I don't have a car, don't have a license. Why? Like everything else, a long story. And conceptually, what brought me here? It's family history and personal history. Family history, father born 1907, Northern Rural Mexico, moved to the U.S. 1926, died 1980s, and his struggles in Mexico and in the U.S. Mother, born 1926, different part of Northern Rural Mexico, moved to the U.S. in 1951, died in the 1990s. And interesting thing about father is, well, I don't want to be too Freudian, but one of his last jobs was with WPA, Work Progress Administration, an FDR program, bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1942. He was told by a nurse when he was in the hospital because he lost 2 inches on the left leg during a LA County road construction accident. He was told by the nurse, listen, U.S. is at war. If you volunteer to fight for the U.S. Army, you'll get automatic citizenship. His response, I'm way too old to fight. Her response was, the law doesn't say anything about actual age. So he used but didn't abuse the system, became a U.S. citizen. Mother moved to the U.S. in the 1950s under a tourist visa, worked for several years illegally, married my father. When Reagan did his tax reform stuff, she was forced to become a U.S. citizen because of her marriage. And that was something a bit painful for her because I think she lost a part of her soul. And I, loving family, too loving, too controlling, too fearful. So I escaped a few attempts, LA to Denver to accidentally go to college. Wasn't planning to go to college that far away. Then a few 13 marathons in 18 months in the 1990s, a physical running away from family situation in LA. How one accidentally does a marathon, different long story. Accidentally going to Thailand for 16 years as an English teacher, 2 years as a Buddhist monk. Living in Thailand legally for 3 years. Working illegally in Thailand for several years, for the last 13 years, about 10 years as an English teacher, 2+ years as a Buddhist monk. So the knowledge of being manipulated by being a hourly subcontracted worker, the tension of knowing that I was living and working illegally in a foreign country, not having the best knowledge of Thai, accidentally becoming a Buddhist monk because of a debaucherous lifestyle in Thailand. That's what happens when you have too much power, not enough maturity in a different culture. And accidentally showing up in Minnesota, accidentally being homeless, accidentally living in shelters after I stopped being a Buddhist monk. And the regarding gratitude of Hennepin County, like looking at my entire collective life, not just 20 years of my life where earlier people that I was trying to get jobs with earlier basically said, you're multilingual, multicultural, that's great, but we can't use you because as far as we're concerned, you haven't legally done anything for 20 years because we're not checking. Hennepin County was able to look beyond that. So gratitude and loyalty to Hennepin County, but being a union paying member didn't give me any real empowerment because I wasn't doing anything. So I felt as if I was being nitpicked, micromanaged by one of my supervisors. I point the I feel, because that may or may not have been true, but greater obvious involvement in the union. That particular manager backed off, did not micromanage me. I ended up doing better work because I was more confident and trusted my abilities more because someone wasn't looking over my shoulder. So the entire thing is that being obviously involved in the union gave me greater empowerment and improved my personal life, my mental life, and my work life. So an entire aspect of growth, evolution, a holistic, but also kaleidoscope viewpoint on reality. Kaleidoscope, bits of plastic in a machine. You move the machine around and same plastic form different patterns. So just my entire life experience has taught me that when I recognize disempowerment in myself, when I recognize empowerment in my life, and the ability to try to look at different realities at the same time. Micro reality, larger holistic reality, conventional reality, and hopefully ultimate reality. Now, what ultimate reality is, that's a philosophical question. So we'll just end that. The entire union experience has brought me greater empowerment.
Well, and just on that note, what does it mean to you to be a union member here and now in 2025?
Again, okay, well, in this case, starting with the word empowerment, but because of my personality, I see similarities to current U.S. reality with previous U.S. reality. Someone once said, history rhymes, it doesn't repeat. I say that Occidental view of time is linear, Oriental view of time is cyclical. I view as time spiral. And I personally view McKinley, The Gilded Age, similar to Ronald Reagan and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous view of reality. And I view Hoover and the Great Stock Market Crash and Great Depression the way I currently view Trump, current stock market high, and what I think will be a crash and another Great Depression. So the U.S. and the world overcame one situation about 100 years ago, and I'm hopeful, not confident, but hopeful that the U.S. and the world can overcome this situation, not without blood, pain, heartbreak, but to quote an individual, the only thing reality can offer us is blood, sweat, and tears.
My name's Rachel Brattiger. I am part of OPEIU Local 12. I work for Centerpoint Energy, and I, started by signing up to be a union steward. That got me more involved with the union. They were looking for a representative on the board for public utility sector, and so I recently got sworn in to the board for that. And that first session, they were like, "Anybody want to go to MULP?" And I was like, "What is that?" And the more they started talking about it, and some of our other board members had the opportunity to come through this program, the more I was like, "Yes, please sign me up." And it's been a really exciting journey, and the people that I've met here have just been across the board incredible. From the very first round of introductions that we did, I came away feeling like I am excited to talk to and get to know every person that I have heard speak thus far. And so it's been a really great experience, and I've learned so much, both in session, but also from other union leaders in different fields, just in between at meals, walking around this gorgeous landscape and looking at the lake.
Yeah, it truly is a incredible, unique program. I would. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Doing the work that I do to get the chance to come here and be part of this with all of you. Like you said, different union members, officers from different industries, different unions across the state, all together here in this beautiful setting, talking about labor history, labor strategy, and everything in between. It's a really special place, MULP, and you guys are a really special group of people. And I wanted to sort of ask, the same question I've been asking everyone, which is taking in everything we've been talking about over the past 2 days. What does it mean to you to be a union member, here and now in the USA in the year 2025?
I feel like being a union member today in 2025 is a precarious privilege. It's something that, having the solidarity with our union, with the members both in my shop and across the local, we have privileges that a lot of workers in this country don't have. We have stability and security that a lot of workers in this country don't have. And I think that, puts us in a position of privilege, but, under, this current administration and what's happening in the world, it's in a very precarious spot. And we are at risk of losing more and more as these power structures, come after labor. But I think also part of that too then gives us a responsibility to do something with that privilege. I feel that very strongly. And so the union also, I think, is a great like structure for change, and it's a way of taking like individual work and like amplifying it. And I think that's what we need, because alone we can't fight these power structures. But if we amplify our voice together and amplify each other's voice and each other's actions, then, you know, we'll be able to fight back like against those structures much more effectively. And so I think that, you know, coming here especially like is part of that coalition building that we need to be doing between different labor organizations to like start enacting like broader scale, you know, resistance. And so I think it's being a union member today is, you know, amplifies our power to make a difference. It's empowering. And I'm really grateful to be here and to have these opportunities. And we're all fucking pissed. I'm sorry, but like you know, there's so much to be angry about, and there's so much that can feel defeating. And, you know, if we give into that, then, you know, we've already lost. But if we build bridges together and build power together, then like that's just our best hope for the future.
All right, gang, that's going to wrap things up for us this week. Once again, I want to thank all the incredible folks at the University of Minnesota Labor Education Services team, everyone who does the unsung work to make the Minnesota Union Leadership Program happen. And I want to thank all the MULP participants who sat down and spoke with me for this episode, and everyone who attended for making our retreat so special and for keeping the labor movement alive. And of course, I want to thank you all for listening, and I want to thank you for caring. We'll see y'all back here next week for another episode of Working People. And if you can't wait that long, then go explore all the great work that we're doing at the Real News Network, where we do grassroots journalism that lifts up the voices and stories from the front lines of struggle here in the U.S. and around the world. Sign up for the Real News newsletter so you never miss a story, and help us do more work like this by going to therealnews.com/donate and becoming a supporter today. I promise you guys, it really makes a difference. I'm Maximilian Alvarez. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Solidarity forever.
When my face you no longer see, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever we go, we are going to roll the union on. The song, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever hungry are we. Just as hungry can be. The song, I live on, yes, I live on. Where mean things are happening in this land. It's read a song, I live on, yes, I live on.